Hey everyone, Akindayo here. As an investigative journalist, I want to welcome all of you political communication students to today's Explainer. We're going to treat this as a masterclass in crisis communication, or well, more accurately, a masterclass in the massive ethical failures of premature official statements. You see, as investigators, we know that words matter. When public officials speak up during a crisis, their words can either shine a light on the truth or completely bury it. So in this case study, we're going to dissect exactly what happens when an official narrative completely derails from reality. Here's our syllabus for today. First, we'll look at the tragedy in the bush, then examine the official government narrative. After that, we'll dissect this idea of a natural death, compare standard rhetoric versus bandit propaganda, and wrap up with the irony of the spokesperson. Section 1. The tragedy in the bush. Okay, before we can even begin to analyze the public relations spin, we have to ground ourselves in the actual brutal facts. As journalists, where do we start? We start with the timeline. On day 1, a man is just going about his normal business and is violently kidnapped. For weeks, he's dragged deep into the bush, totally exposed to the harsh elements, chained up, and used as a literal bargaining chip in a prisoner swap negotiation. And tragically, this timeline ends with the man dying in captivity. We really have to sit with this reality for a moment because understanding the intense trauma this victim endured, that is what sets up the sheer absurdity of the government's later claims.
And you know what's wild? This ordeal wasn't some highly classified state secret that the government was totally in the dark about. Not at all. The public literally watched videos of this victim and other captives bound in chains. The trauma was broadcast for everyone to see. The violence was clearly documented. Keep that reality in the back of your mind as we look at how the authorities actually decided to communicate about this tragedy.
Section 2. The official government narrative. Shifting our focus from the scene of the crime to the government podium, the sheer audacity of this official quote is just staggering. The Katsina State Internal Security and Home Affairs Commissioner looked at that exact timeline we just reviewed and concluded that the victim died a natural death caused by complications from diabetes and hypertension. I mean, really think about that from a communications standpoint. Using the phrase natural death for a hostage who was violently abducted, chained, and held against his will in the wild, it's an absolutely appalling choice of words.
But here's the absolute kicker. You have to look at the context in which the statement was made. There was no autopsy conducted. Zero. No independent investigation had actually been completed. This statement was issued completely preemptively. As an investigative journalist, and for you all as students of political communication, this right here is the core ethical violation. The official basically cleared the bandits of murder before any scientific, medical, or investigative facts were actually established. He just swapped out hard evidence for an incredibly convenient assumption.
Section 3. Dissecting the natural death.
Okay, let's dive into this and critically analyze the massive gap between the known reality and this completely flawed conclusion. The disconnect in the commissioner's logic is just absolute. On one hand, we have the known facts, right? The victim was violently abducted, held in incredibly harsh conditions, subjected to extreme stress, put in chains. And yet, on the other hand, the commissioner's conclusion points to complications from diabetes, a natural death. It carries this implicit message that his death had absolutely nothing to do with being kidnapped. The official narrative is quite literally asking the public to believe that being denied freedom and kept by armed criminals for weeks had zero impact on his mortality. Like I said, it is a masterclass in what not to do. Section 4. Rhetoric versus bandit propaganda. First, let's define our terms. Crisis communication is the strategic dissemination of information to address an emergency. Simple enough. But ethically, and this is absolutely crucial for every student listening today, it utterly fails when it sanitizes violent criminal acts. This definition sets our academic baseline for why the commissioner's statement isn't just a simple misstep, it is a textbook failure in ethical political communication. So how does standard government crisis communication actually compare to what was delivered in Katsina? Well, a standard ethical government press release relies on facts. It awaits an autopsy, and above all, it holds the criminals accountable. Bandit propaganda, on the flip side, absolves the criminals of blame and cites underlying health conditions just to dodge the label of murder. Astonishingly, the commissioner's statement perfectly mirrors the propaganda. By preemptively diagnosing the victim, the government official effectively acted as a PR mouthpiece for the kidnappers. Which leads us perfectly to a direct quote from our source material by Aliyu Amani, "These bandits are truly lucky bandits." The author uses this dripping sarcasm to really spotlight the bandits' incredible fortune here. I mean, they didn't even have to hire a lawyer or a spin doctor to explain their innocence. The government stepped right up to the podium and did it for them before the facts were even known.
Section 5. The irony of the spokesperson.
For the final phase of our masterclass today, let's break down the specific rhetorical device Amani uses to dismantle this government spin: irony. It's the expression of meaning by using language that signifies the opposite. In this case study, it is used brilliantly to expose the dark absurdity of public officials protecting the very criminals they are supposed to be fighting. Calling the Internal Security Commissioner the new spokesman for the bandits is a profound, devastating critique of an official whose words end up providing a shield for violent actors.
When you trace this escalation, it shows us something honestly terrifying about modern asymmetric warfare and communication. In step 1, the bandits had to force their victims, like the late General Rabe and his wife, to act as their spokespersons through coerced hostage videos. But in step 2, they get a massive upgrade. They use the Honorable Commissioner to explain their innocence, and he does it completely voluntarily, right from a government office. The bandits upgraded their entire public relations strategy without lifting a single finger.
Amani leaves us with this incredibly biting conclusion. At this rate, all that is left is for the bandits to issue an official press statement and appoint a media aide. It's funny, sure, but it highlights the logical, absolutely absurd endpoint of the government's current rhetorical trajectory. When officials preemptively spin narratives just to avoid acknowledging their own security failures, they completely blur the lines between the state and the criminals. So I want to close this case study by challenging you, the students and future practitioners of political communication, with this provocative question. What is the ultimate cost to truth and justice when public officials spin a narrative before the facts are actually known? Because when crisis communications sanitizes a crime just to save face, the victim is erased and the criminal is emboldened. As you go forward in your careers, remember the autopsy of this statement. Remember that truth really is the only ethical foundation for communication. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the narrative and always keep seeking the truth.